It's the Growing for Market podcast.
I always advise to really think about yourself as not the customer, because you really don't look at the products that you do with the same perspective. As you mentioned, like whenever we are farmers, we look at our crops as from the beginning, from the seedlings, and then you plant them and then you spend time nurturing and then you bring it to the market and you have totally different connection to that product than someone who is just coming to buy. And I know sometimes it can be painful, but I think it's really true. And it's with every brand, it's with every product. Marketers or people involved in the business are really the least objective. And that way we can then really position our communication in a way that it suits the customers, not us.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good...
And I think farmers as well have this tendency, and I'm me as well, we are very proud of what we do. And we believe that it's enough. And we believe that it's, our work speaks for itself. But I think it's not enough. And then we need to really talk about it and talk in a language that our customers will understand.
Hello, and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing flowers and vegetables for local markets. I'm Andrew Mefford, your host and the editor of Growing for Market magazine, proudly celebrating 35 years in 2026 as the magazine by and for vegetable and flower market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait till you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people find the podcast. And now, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free. Today's episode of the Growing for Market podcast is brought to you by BCS America. On our farm, we've had our BCS two-wheel tractor for over a decade, and with no belts to slip, its all-gear-driven construction is still going strong. Though we originally got it for rototilling, we kept it even when we went mostly no-till, because it can do so many other things around the farm. From snow blowing, to making raised beds with the rotary plow, to chipping wood, it can do just about anything you might need on a farm with the right attachment. Need to shred a cover crop? A BCS flail mower will make quick work of even the most vigorous cover crop and chop it up so it breaks down quickly. Want to stir in compost or amendments without inverting soil layers? A power harrow turns your BCS into a precise tilthing machine with depth control so you don't mix deeper than you want to. With so many attachments to choose from, it truly is the Swiss Army knife of farm implements. It's why, instead of saying two-wheel tractor, so many people just say BCS. Tractors and attachments are on sale through the end of the year. Visit bcsamerica.com to find sale pricing and your nearest dealer. If you grow for market, you know performance is everything. That's why so many farmers are turning to Burpee's Farmers Market. Dedicated to professional growers, Burpee is now offering non-GMO seeds in larger quantities, bred and selected for standout flavor, strong yields, and the kind of visual appeal your customers crave. All farmers market varieties are trialed at Burpee's Research Farm in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, where expert horticulturalists test for germination rate, vigor, disease resistance, high yield, and consistency, things that make a difference in the field and to your bottom line. The seed assortment includes USDA certified organic varieties, Burpee bred classics, heirlooms, and exciting new introductions. Burpee's been doing this for 150 years, and they're still creating new varieties with growers like you in mind. You can check out the full lineup at burpee.com/farmersmarket. That's burpee.com/farmersmarket. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Jakub Kosmowski to the Growing for Market podcast. Jakub runs Farma, a vegetable farm in Poland, but before that, he had a career for 17 years as a marketing director, including working with Fortune 500 companies. Jakub reached out to us because he thought there could be some ideas from his marketing background that would be helpful for other farmers, and I'm so glad he did, because I bet he's right. So, without further ado, welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, Jakub.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it still kind of blows my mind that you can be there in Poland and I'm here in Maine in the Northeast United States and we can just talk like this. But I sure am glad that we can, because I think that marketing is probably a subject that a lot of farmers don't give a whole lot of thought to. And as I mentioned to you, since you reached out to us, I was so excited when you did, because we really try to focus on the business of farming along with marketing and growing, of course, here at Growing for Market. But I feel like sometimes it's harder to find people who have business and marketing expertise that relates to farming than it is to find people who want to talk about like how to grow a tasty tomato, or how to get good yields out of carrots or something like that. So when people like yourself reach out to us about these important subjects, I always get excited. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today, because marketing is a struggle for all businesses. I know, we started to put a lot of thought into marketing here at Growing for Market. And we also, thought about how to market our farm and some of the entities like farmers markets that we were involved with back when we were doing the farmers market. So I feel like marketing is something almost every business could improve with. But first, can you tell us a bit about your farm as far as what your climate is like, how much land you grow on, and if you have any greenhouses and what you grow?
For sure. Thank you very much again. Yeah, so we are a small farm, or we would say even micro farm. We are working in hectares, but in acre, that would be around below 10 acres. But at the moment, we use only 1 acre, not full 1 acre for market gardening. We have 2 tunnels, which we use for tomatoes, peppers, and worm-loving crops. And the rest is diverse crops, which we use for almost strictly towards our CSA, but also we do ship to some of the health food stores across Poland, and we also do some of the restaurants. But majority of what we do is CSA. And also now we are experimenting with this, with a little bit of a new model, which is CSA / eShop, where people can buy credit and exchange it for vegetables and get a shipping with that. So we are not trying to be only local, but we try to ship around Poland, specifically with the help of a good logistic partner who really secures this 24-hour delivery, which gives us this security that people will get our goods fresh and not in a bad state. And in terms of climate, I think we are we're similar climate to what you have, maybe a little bit warmer. Our last frost date is around 15th of May, and the first frost is beginning of October. And I would say for the past 10 years, we got quite warmer, at least in the winter time. And summers are quite dry as well. So we need to use a lot of irrigation as well, because it gets pretty hot. And we are south of Poland.
Okay, yeah, that climate sounds like probably a lot of our audience in USA and some in Canada, like probably sounds like a similar climate. There's definitely people in our audience that are going to have a similar climate to you. In fact, where I am in central Maine, I'm pretty sure we're colder than you are, because central Maine, where I am, is on the same parallel as the south of France. But I know the south of France is a lot warmer because of the Gulf Stream. And so I'm sure it's the same for you. I think you're farther north than us, but actually warmer than us here. But we're like, even for, we're up here in the northeast corner of the United States. So even where I am is kind of like people probably in most of the rest of the United States and parts of Canada think of us as like a cold, short season place. So I think people can relate to your climate. And what does your farm name mean?
It's Farma Wola. It's Farma is farm, but Wola is the area that's still an old name since I believe that was 1700s probably, where people, when they were migrating, they were calling Wola and then the name of a specific area. So it's basically just to play with the name. It's not something specific. It's just a nice sounding name and it's easy to remember for people. And we also found, the domain was empty, so we bought it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I was curious to ask what the local farm scene is like where you are. For example, whether people are enthusiastic about buying locally grown food. And part of the reason I ask is because we had a movement here in North America that we call the locavore movement of like, I feel like from World War II to the 80s, let's say, farming was getting very consolidated and very industrialized. And I want to say like at some point in the 90s, there was a movement to like eat food grown in flowers grown closer to home, and that really did seem to help local farmers as far as like finding more customers and people who are willing to pay, in some cases, a premium for local food. So I'm curious, just like if there's a locavore movement in Poland, or like, is there any way you can tell us what the local food and flower scene is like there?
Sure. I mean, we almost always had this connection to farmers markets, and they were popular in Poland for many, many years. But obviously, with the access of new big supermarkets, the convenience part of shopping got in the way of that a bit. But I would say there are two verticals. One is people are still going to those farmers markets, and they're trying to find local good food, and on the other hand there are still people which are driven by price and convenience, and that's one thing. But I think now specifically people are getting a little bit more health conscious with how they make their choices in terms of what they eat, and I believe that now it's a good time for small scale farms to really shine, because there are people who want to buy those products. But I think we still have not enough of those farms, because if you would look into the official, let's call it a local website of the CSA program, there's maybe 10 or 11 farms across the whole Poland, which is not a lot. And because we are quite a big country.
Yeah.
So this movement still needs to go. One of the missions which I have as well is I want to show that you can earn a good living on a farm, and you can sustain yourself, and you can do something good, which is, grow healthy food. And I think now people getting into that mode as well, that they can buy direct. I think big part of what the issue was in the past was that we had a lot of farmers which are not huge, but they still used quite a lot of pesticides. And there was this trust which was missing between the customers and the farmers. And now I think things are becoming more transparent, and maybe that's a good opportunity for those farmers to shine, really.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think in a way that's part of what we're trying to do here at Growing for Market, because I realized that farming got very industrialized. You go far enough back. I don't know. I think you go back 100 years here in the United States, and something like a third of the population was farming. And now it's like 1%. And, one of the ways that they cut out a lot of the labor of farming was mechanization and chemicals, right? And so I feel like part of what we're trying to do here at Growing for Market is share the ways that people can grow without chemicals, since a lot of that got replaced by, chemical agriculture. And we're trying to just make sure people have that knowledge is available, so people know how to grow without chemicals if they want to.
Yeah, one of the choices that we made was that we don't want to only communicate our products and our crops, but also we want to communicate a lot of the health aspects of eating organic and fresh food. And I think this is what becomes really important for people. They see what's happening across the globe with the chronic diseases on the rise. So they want to make those choices. And we want to serve those people who have awareness what healthy food stands for, what those farms also can provide you, right? And this is what we are trying to communicate on. And what we see is that this is changing the conversation with the customers totally. Because in the beginning, whenever you're trying to reach people who just want to buy locally, then they will always compare you on price. But if you tell them that your mission is to really supply them with healthy food, I think it's totally different. And the conversation is becoming something totally else. And then you can really value yourself and your products to your needs, and you can really sustain yourself in the long run.
Oh, that's brilliant. Because I think you're right. Like, I feel like sometimes like local farmers need to be in the business of decommodifying their produce, right? Because you're right. It doesn't matter where it came from. If it's just like a carrot is a carrot, people are going to try and pay the lowest price for it. It's kind of like people putting gas in their cars or whatever, right? They're not like, ooh, I need to get this gas or that gas. They're usually just like, what's the cheapest gas? I want to buy the cheapest gas. Whereas, if local farmers can make their products not seem like commodities, like a carrot's a carrot, seem like, oh, my carrots are fresher or healthier or some other thing, they can compete better with the products that are probably cheaper from bigger, more industrialized farms.
Naturally, you go into the discussion about brand, because whenever you make a claim like that, you have a lot of responsibility to deliver on that, and that's becoming your own brand. Because as you said, the opposite of commodity is brand, and whenever you position yourself as someone who really grows healthy food, obviously then the responsibility on you is to deliver on that promise. And obviously, we have the knowledge what healthy food means. At least I believe that most of the farmers know exactly if you don't use pesticides, you try to build healthy soil, you have the biggest chance of producing healthy vegetables. And if you do that with transparency and you communicate that to the customers, you have much bigger chances of success in terms of how you, as you said, decommodify yourself and your products and your offering.
Well, Jakub, how should local farmers think about branding? Because like you just saying that now made me think about how there are some larger brands in a way that I think a lot of local farmers tap into, like, for example, certified organic. I mean, I'm not even sure if you would consider that a brand, but for example, like a lot of people in our audience are certified organic. A lot of people in our audience, grow organically, but are not certified. So I've also seen those growers called, say, like organic but uncertified, or more organic, or like they'll come up with different words to show that they're not using chemicals even if they're not certified organic. Because I think here in the USA, I think it's like in Europe, it's strict about how you can't use the word certified organic. You can't really use organic unless you're certified. So like, is like organic, does that count as a brand as far as you're concerned? Or are you talking more about like a personal brand for an individual farm?
Well, I think the best solution would be to really brand yourself, right? And whenever you then choose a channel, how you sell your goods, you're becoming a brand in that specific channel. That would be amazing. But I'm not sure if a lot of people have time to do that, because that would require really proper steps in terms of being consistent with the quality, being consistent with your offering. And you can do that. And I think that would be amazing if you then show up to your farmer's market and, you're the one who only has a line to your stand. I would say that's a good brand, right? Because they know that if they are buying from you, you give them a promise of a quality of a product. I would say that still, at least in Poland and in Europe, certified organic, or we actually call it's a bit different naming, but it's the same certification. It gives you this, I would say, this one step in terms of conversation with the customer, because even then there is still a part of, let's say, activities that you can do within the certification that maybe are not the best. You can still have large scale farms within organic certification.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they maybe are not taking such a big step towards really building a healthy soil as a smaller producer would be. But it's certainly a good step forward. But I would say, specifically today with social media and how much we can communicate towards our customers, I think there's a big opportunity in being transparent. If you really believe in what you do, and if you position yourself as someone who is producing the best possible food, I think then social media give you amazing opportunity, because you can really communicate what you stand for, and you can do it in real time on your farm and show the processes that you do. But of course, it takes time.
Yeah. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Hey farmers, it's Lindsay from Farm Generations Cooperative. CSA season is here. Are you ready to sell your shares? I co-founded Grown By because I was tired of CSA apps that didn't do what I needed, owned by companies that didn't have my back. Grown By is different. It's 90% owned by farmers, and it's the most powerful CSA tool out there. From building custom shares based on your inventory to managing up to 1,000 members to an app your customers will actually love. Now, I know some of you are still on Google Forms and Sheets and Docs and whatever else, and I get that because it's free. But you know what? They're actually not. Because you are doing the work of entering installment payments, your customers are probably forgetting to pick up their shares, and your drop-off rates are probably high because you can't offer flexibility with vacation weeks or rescheduling. A CSA platform is worth it. You can make your customers happy, and you can focus more on farming. Check out all the ways Grown By can help you grow your farm at coop.grownby.com/farmers. That's coop.grownby.com/farmers.
This episode is sponsored by Nifty Hoops. Nifty Hoops designs and builds high tunnel systems for growers who want dependable results. What stands out is that Nifty Hoops tunnels are complete systems designed by experienced builders with the details worked out ahead of time. That means the core components are included from the start, like end walls, ventilation, doors, baseboards, and double layer poly, rather than being added later. The tunnels are designed for real wind and snow loads, efficient assembly, and long service life. You can choose a self-build kit with guidance from written manuals and videos, or a community build where Nifty Hoops works alongside you and the project gets completed in one day. Nifty Hoops has built more than 1,500 hoop houses across the country, including many funded through the NRCS High Tunnel Initiative. They're known nationwide for predictable outcomes and ongoing support. If you're planning a high tunnel project and want it done right, you can learn more at niftyhoops.com. And now, back to the show. Well, I'm glad that you brought up social media because I enjoy your social media feed. I think you do a good job of having like short messages that I think people can relate to. And sometimes it's hard to be very short and also have substance. You know, it's really easy to just like say something quickly, but it's hard to get a lot of substance in there. And so I would encourage people to check out your social media feed if they want to see how you put that into practice.
Unfortunately, it's in Polish, but
Right. Well, two things. So some of the ones where you talk, some of your videos are in English, right?
yeah, because we translated some of them with subtitles. Yeah.
Okay. And then at least on Instagram, which is what I use mostly, they have a translate feature now. So people can actually like maybe not, I don't know if it'll translate the videos if those are in Polish, but it'll translate the body of the post. Like I'm able to see a translation into English of what you're saying. So well, all right, let's back up a little bit because I'm not surprised. I think if I saw your videos without knowing that you had a background in marketing, it wouldn't surprise me to find out because, I think they're good. But can you just tell us a little bit about your background in marketing and why you left marketing for farming?
Yeah, it's a long story. And I think, because I'm a first generation farmer. I never had a background in it. I was not born on a farm. I was born in a city. And I went, I early on, I tried a lot of different jobs. First starting in creative parts of marketing, design, and going into film production. I was even working on some of the Hollywood movies as a small part, but I was there. But then I moved towards marketing because I wanted to have bigger influence on how those creative ideas were translated to business objectives. And I moved and worked some of the brands, which are huge brands with a lot bigger budgets. But at some point I was thinking if I want to do that forever, and COVID came, and I think everyone was touched a bit with the supply chain issues in terms of what was available in stores and so on. And that was just a small impulse towards really thinking if I want to be a little bit more self-sustainable. And why I'm really positioning my farm and what we do with the health aspect, because whenever we got into the health side of food, we saw that healthy soil really leads towards supplying yourself with healthy food. And at that time, after COVID, we had some health issues in the family. And I just, I went into it totally because I read a lot of everything what I could. And I made a decision that going on, I want to be a farmer and I want to really produce the best food for my family. And that grew to, supplying our friends, then friends of friends. And last year we made a decision to really go out to the market, and I think that's going to stay like that because, I think there are a lot of people who can produce new startup, new product, but my marketing skills maybe are more useful here in growing and farming the proper way. So
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's it. It's marketing is every business needs to do marketing. And so I can see how the background that you already have, I'm sure you're making use of it for the farm.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I thought that because we had a discussion about it, right? Even within marketing and even within businesses, large businesses, marketing is being portrayed as something totally different. People see social media or communication as a marketing, but good marketing is much more than that. Good marketing really looks at the product, it really looks at the price, and really looks at where people can buy your product. And then only based on those three pillars, we can build communication plan. But without that, people only look at the endpoint and, only looking at social media or email campaigns and so on. But that's only the end process. And yeah, I want to, my idea and my mission is to really grow our activities in farming and in food production to the max. But along the way, I want to share at least what I've learned in marketing, and maybe some of the farmers can make use of that. And as we said, have the best chance of succeeding in the market, because I believe there's a lot of people who want to grow good food. They want to provide quality products, but because they are neglecting marketing a bit, they don't have the best chance in the market, because there are companies which have bigger budgets. We don't have those budgets, but we need to be smart about how to use them.
Yeah. So are there any advantages that you can think of so like big companies have a bigger marketing budget, but farmers have authenticity, for example? Like, are there any advantages that farmers can take advantage of despite the fact they don't have as big of a budget as, like big food companies?
Yeah, I mean, in what you just said, right? We have authenticity, and I believe a lot of your listeners have the same thing. And then it's just a question about segmenting your market with people, with segments who represent those customers who will value that authenticity, right? Because those bigger brands have bigger budgets, but they need to reach the whole market. For a farmer to reach a certain level, financial level, he needs to just reach a small portion of that market, and with the right message, being authentic. And I think that's the leverage which they can pull. Because when you think about it, it all starts with the whole market. And if you think about that you need to reach the whole market, you will never be able to do that, because even the biggest brands cannot reach everyone. Right. And, it's always a struggle, even if you have millions of dollars for marketing, for advertising budget. So it's about segmenting where your best customer is, but then looking at where he makes or she makes the decision about purchasing your products, and only advertising, if you want to advertise, only advertising in those areas. That already gives you a very small portion where you need to show up. And I think that's the way how you can reach those customers. I was sharing with you the story that whenever we started with our CSA, we made a conscious decision that we don't want to do high reach activities to reach with our offering, but we choose specific collaborations with people who have our perfect customers, who are aware of healthy food, and we specifically target them with our communication. And it was amazing, because we spent 2-3 weeks and our full capacity of CSA members was full. And I think that's a smart way to reach out to customers, because I know that for a lot of farmers, the issue is not growing food, but it's to sell it. And for me, it's the opposite, right? I can sell, but now I need to grow it. And maybe some of the farmers from your listeners will give me some tips. But in general, yeah, I think you need to just show up in front of the right people. Farmers markets are great, right? Your customers are there. Then it's only a question, in that specific channel, it will be a question of being different or distinctive from other farmers.
Yeah.
Either by quality, by branding, but that's one part. But then whenever you access different channels, you have to make a choice how to get in front of those audiences that will buy from you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to talk about how to get in front of the right people, the audiences that'll buy from you, do you want to talk about how you advertised your CSA that you were able to sell it out? Or would that be a good takeoff point? Or you go ahead and that's a great question.
Yeah, we can, because, as I said, before we even made a crop plan, or before we even made an idea that we will, what we will grow, we made a decision that we want to grow as healthy crops as possible. And we believe that the only audience that will appreciate that will be people who are health conscious in terms of what they eat, how they eat, and what is the source of food. And we saw that there's a big problem for them, that they don't trust every farmer or every market or whatever they are doing their own shopping. They don't trust the source. So that's why we made the decisions that we will go towards collaborations with dietitians and with people who are in the health space. We reach out to them. We gave them some affiliation in terms of, they will get some goods from us. But as far as they will communicate our offering to their audiences. For us, that was a home run, because we saw that we didn't have to discuss prices with those customers, but we discussed, how we grow stuff. Is it really organic? What is the whole surrounding of the farm? They were asking questions which we wanted them to ask, instead of, either arguing about price or arguing about those specific products. And I think that's a big difference, because when you want to market to everyone, you're getting into a risk that you will reach people who will not buy from you anyway. They will just, they will probably just argue about price. This is too expensive or stuff like that. But if you reach to people who are connected to your branding and your brand purpose, for us, it was as healthy food as possible. And if you find that audience, then I think the sell will be much easier. Obviously, that's, it's up to every individual farmer what is their goal. But I think if you make that choice, if you think what kind of problem you want to solve for your audience, it makes the communication much, much easier, because then you can really, also your messaging can be totally different. As you mentioned, our social media, we don't promote our stuff so much. We actually talk a lot about health. We talk a lot about nutrient density. We talk a lot about nutrient availability and so on and so on. And that conversation is around health and the impact of food on health. And I feel strongly about it. And we are being authentic in the mission that we are trying to grow as healthy as possible.
Yeah, that's what I noticed, is that a lot of your content isn't so much like buy my stuff. It's what I would call nurture content, as far as it's like content that, I'm thinking your target audience, as far as like health conscious people, would see, and they would see you talking about, why you don't spray pesticides or something like that. It'd be like, okay, that's what I want.
Exactly. You probably, as the season will go, we'll probably show a lot more from the farm, right? We will show a lot more about how we are not using pesticides, like what are the other ways that we are farming, and we will show people. That's what I mentioned before. We will show the transparency behind what we are trying to achieve, and what are some of the choices that we are making on the farm, because we are not using pesticides, we are not using any other synthetic chemicals. And I believe that will be the right message for that customer, because he will then be even more sure about buying from us, because that's exactly what he's looking for. He's looking for clean source of food, and which he can trust, or she.
Okay, well, then that makes a lot of sense why you reached out to like dietitians. And you tell me if I'm wrong, but I imagine there's other, like, farmers could brainstorm what kind of other businesses have people who want to be healthy in their area. I'm thinking like maybe they could go to gyms or something, like, right? If people are going to the gym, they're probably like trying to be healthy.
Sure.
So maybe they could, they could brainstorm what businesses have people who are trying to be healthy.
I think the biggest issue is that what you also mentioned, we need to de-commodify our offering. If we will compete on price, we will always lose, right? Because we don't have the scale to price our products on the market level as in shops. Some of the farms can, and that's amazing, because not only do they communicate that it's clean food, but it's also cheaper, and that's amazing. But still, our biggest mission would be to de-commodify, because otherwise you will end up with people who are choosing between you and a large scale market.
Right.
And what you mentioned, I think looking for these groups of people, those communities of people who are health conscious, this is, I would say, a biggest bet for small scale farmers, because these are the people who will appreciate their offering and what they have to sell.
Yeah. Okay. I like what you're saying about, if I got this right, I feel like you're saying, don't concentrate so much on the individual social media post, but like think about the really big picture. And so are there any other ways on the big picture level that you think that farmers should think about how to get in front of the right people? Like you've mentioned the like going direct to other businesses. I'm sure social media is a part of that. Are there any other ways for farmers to connect in this, to probably like people within their communities too, right? Because so a lot of our audience is selling like to a town or a region, so they need to connect with people that are physically close to them. Any other ways to do that?
I think what is also a big lesson in marketing is that people care a lot less about what we have to offer than we believe. We are always thinking that whatever we do is very precious, but I think it's a very small part of their lives. And whatever we do, we have to be loud about it. And in terms of, either starting with the sign in front of the farm, if you're looking at collecting people in your farm, Like be loud about your branding and what your farm stands for. And the same goes for any extra channels, right? You need to be loud about the mission, like what you're trying to achieve, but also you need to repeat the message, because unfortunately people don't care as much as we do. And you need to remind them like why we do that and why they should choose you, because in the end it's about being in marketing. It's called building the memory structure. So whenever you're building your brand in their memory, and they remember about your brand whenever they need to make a purchase, right? Of course, it's different whenever you think about farmers market, because then it's a totally different environment. Because over there on a farmers market, you need to be distinctive. You need to take them away from your competitor. In the end, it's that. But whenever you're in an open market, you need to be reminding them about your presence as often as possible, to really, so they remember you when they think about this purchase, right? So either if that's online store, or if it's a CSA, or if it's a different model, you need to remind them constantly that you are there, you exist, and what you stand for and what you have to offer.
Okay, that's a really good point. So I guess for a lot of farms in our audience, one of the things they could say is just like, we're your local farmer or something like that, right? Because in a way it's a marketing message that a lot of people in our audience could steal. I don't know if steal is the right word, right? Because I feel like the bigger brands are trying to stand out amongst other bigger brands, but farmers, they're kind of trying to say like, well, we're your local farmer. And so a lot of farmers could say that for a lot of different places, right?
Yeah, I would say probably, in terms of the tactics, I would say, like really work on your Google Maps profile. Look at the stuff that, what you just mentioned. Are you easy to find whenever people will search for offering? Do they really know that you exist? Because one thing is, once they will know that you exist, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that they will appreciate what you have to offer. Because, I think more and more good food will be needed, because people are opening towards the impact of their diets on their health. And I think that will become really strong selling point. But they need to just know that you're existing, because I would say, and I think that this bad feeling about selling stuff and marketing, because they want to grow stuff, they want to feel that this is enough, but in the end, unfortunately, it is not, and you need to remind them constantly that you're there. And I would advise those really simple activities as, set up your Google Maps profile, set up your website, which is clean and exactly says what you want to say, and make it easy to contact you, make it easy for them to know what you're offering, and be as loud as possible on social media, and really try to reach to as many people as possible, and search for the collaborations which I mentioned. Search for people who have larger accounts than you, can offer them something in return, but show up in front of their audiences to showcase your offering, and maybe do a farm tour and stuff like that. But I think, farmers need to go outside of the farm and really search for those customers, because they are there, but it's only a matter of being active.
Yeah, well, that might be a good point about the Google Maps, because I know I've talked to some people who say, like, a lot of times, at least here in the States, when you search, like food close to me, it's like Walmart or, like the local grocery store. They're on the map, of course, right? Yeah. And so then they're not really, what we think of as local food. And so that's a really good point. It's like the actual local growers need to be on there, so it shows up for people. So as far as figuring out what sets people apart, would that just look like brainstorming, like thinking about like what sets our farm apart? Like if a farmer were to sit down and is it just come up with some really simple short messages? Because I feel like there's so much everything right now, so much like email newsletters, websites, social media posts, like I feel like it's probably always a good strategy to be as short as possible, right? Because the longer you make something, the less likely someone's going to get all the way through it. So is that what you recommend? Is like farmers sit down and have a little brainstorming session, think about what sets their produce apart, and try to turn that into short like slogans or short messaging like that?
I would say so. And again, like I would think that the majority of your audience is probably small scale organic, or at least trying to be organic. that's already a big part of, or big reason why people will buy. So it's just about being vocal and coming up with positioning in terms of looking at your surrounding. If there are farms near you which are positioning in the same way, how you can be different from them, and trying to own that in the long term, because it takes time to build a specific, connection to your farm. So either you will be, if you can be fresh and organic, and that's enough, that's amazing. But if, for example, there are 5 other farms which are the same, then you need to think about something different, right? Then maybe you're the first to have something, some crop, or you are producing something totally different. Then own that part and become really known by that one thing, which then will be in the heads of customers when they're trying to make a purchase. But in the end, it's about really, I would just say, I would repeat myself, to really be vocal and really talk to your customers, to your audiences, and try to be in their heads as often as possible. I know it takes time, but I think that's what separates small businesses, is that they are willing to take time and really communicate to their audiences and build that audience, because it takes time to build it slowly, but really doing that.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a good point, is that people maybe in areas that don't have as many farms, maybe it's enough for people to say, like, we're your local farm. But I know there's also, I'm thinking like areas around big cities. Actually, there's probably a lot of farms on the edges that are trying to sell into those cities. They might have a lot more competition. It might not be enough to just be like, the farm for such and such a town. You might have to think of like, what sets us apart? Like, we're the microgreens people, or, exactly. We're the people with the earliest tomatoes, or whatever. People can think about what sets their farm apart from other offerings, so they get the right people to show up there.
And I think it's always worth to look at your business in terms of like what kind of extensions you can make. And maybe there are some ways that you can, bring people to your farm for other activities, either farm tours or specific events, farm to table, that will not only supply you with extra new customers, but gives you this opportunity to also use it in your communication. Because I think that's also one thing that in the end, for us to be successful, we need to sustain ourselves financially. And I think thinking that only growing vegetables is enough, it might be true, but I would probably use it with caution, and I would try to always look for ways how you can bring more people, because there will be some kind of churn that will happen. And you want to make sure that there's always something happening on your farm that brings people to your farm or to your farm's website, right? So people really know what they look for. And there's, again, technology in that sense is amazing, because we can bring them to our website, we can bring them with content, we can bring them with exclusive resources that we can give them for free, and so on, and really build that audience around our place, and then use it whenever we are trying to sell them something. But in the end, it's really about this repetitive work which you need to do. And I know that this is often what drives farmers away from it, because it just takes time. And I know it takes time, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I want to pick up on something you just said about the repetitive nature of it, because I feel like it can feel like a lot to be like, oh, I need to come up with like a whole new idea for a social media post or something like that. But I'm curious what you think about how repetitive people need to be, because I've also learned that really only a fraction of even people who follow us, only a fraction of our audiences see very much of what we put out there. Like, I've been told the number of like 10%, roughly, like only about 10% of your own audience sees like the social media posts that you put out there, just because of there's just so much content. I used to think like, oh, if we make a post, then our audience will have seen it. But now, like, I feel like I've learned it's not a bad thing to maybe not repeat maybe not the exact same message with the exact same graphics, but that you actually need to say the same thing over and over to reach everybody who would benefit from your message.
Definitely. And I think one thing which, like, building on top of the other point which I made about people not caring about what you have to offer, is the same with social media. They might see what you posted, but even I remember a situation with our own CSA signups. We had a lot of people who signed up. They were very interested, And we made a decision that we will very actively go towards the follow-up. We were calling people, we were asking them what happened, why they didn't finish the sign up and so on. And very often it was just, oh, I forgot, oh, I didn't see the email. And it's, like we assume that whatever we sent to the market is being received. But the reality is totally different. Very often it's either missed or it's forgotten or it's, somehow even, maybe missed with intention. So we need to remind about ourselves. And it's either the same message repeated from time to time, or it's different angles on the same message being translated. But when we talk about time consumption of social media in general, I would probably point out to what you said earlier and building on this authenticity. Because when you're authentic, I think you can also use a lot of your time in an effective way. So it doesn't need to be perfect in terms of creativity, but as long as it's authentic. So I would not pay attention so much to the quality of video for farmers, more about really being authentic and being often in the media. So really taking this time to say a few words about what's going on and what's happening and what they are doing now. And I think that's already building this connection between them and whatever you said, setting them apart from the competition, right? Because either you have a specific sense of humor and people follow you because of that. And we would be surprised what are some of the reasons why people purchase. Because we always believe that this is the main point that we're trying to bring to the audience will be the one reason why they buy. But sometimes they buy because of something totally different. And maybe that's your character or the look of your farm or whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point, is, if I'm understanding you right, is to say, like, farmers shouldn't stress about having the perfect content, because people will probably just enjoy hearing from them. Like, so few people farm anymore. Even if they're just out in the field, like, do a quick social media post or something, like you said, it's probably the authenticity of it being from a small business, of someone who's out there working in their own business. They don't have to worry about getting it perfect. I mean, like, probably video and audio quality has to be good enough, right? If the video quality is bad and it's hard to understand the person, it's probably not gonna make an impression. But it's like luckily we don't have to be the Kardashians. We're a bunch of farmers. It's like I feel like we can be who we are, and it's like we're not in a niche. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like beauty or some wellness or things, it's probably more important for those people to be really polished, whereas I think farmers can get away with just kind of like being who they are, which should be reassuring.
100%. And the only thing to remember, I would say, that whenever you're trying to say something to your audience, think about the reason why you want them to buy. Because often we also get into, you look at the farming accounts and they talk a lot about details of a specific farming method, or they go into details about a specific crop. And it's interesting for us, for farmers. But the question is, do you want to collect farmers on your account, or do you want to collect your customers in your audience, right? That will buy from you. Because other farmers will never buy from you, but they will be educated, but they will not buy from you. So that's very important to remember, who are you talking to? Because that will make the message totally different. And I think that's a really important key.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point to make. Because farmers aren't trying to recruit other farmers. They're trying to connect with people who want to buy their food. So
yeah, because you have then massive accounts that, and to be honest, I'm following all of those accounts and I'm following all of the farms, because it's interesting to see what they are producing and how is exactly their high tunnel setup and so on and so on. But I'm not sure if the customer will be interested in that. He will probably be interested in, like how fresh his new carrot will look, and how, like how you're not using pesticides, like what it takes to really harvest carrots and stuff like that, instead of really going into specific of functioning of the farm on a farm level, if you know what I mean.
I think I do. I think, like day in the life kind of stuff of like,
yeah.
Like if you got to think about who you want to be buying your produce or your flowers, right? You think about how much work ahead of time goes into putting a carrot on the farmer's market table or a bouquet of flowers, right? Is that, like, obviously farmers were planting those crops months before their customers saw them. I'm thinking that would be an opportunity to talk about like planting the carrots or planting the dahlia tubers or whatever, as almost like telegraphing to their customers to both show day in the life kind of stuff and also show them what's coming.
100%. And also, I have a few farms which I follow here in Poland, and their owners made specific choices that their content on their accounts is not about farming at all, because they wanted to connect with people who they knew they will buy from them, but it's about, either philosophy or health and stuff like that, because they knew that their audience will be interested in that. So it's always interesting to really think about what your audience wants to hear and how you want to position your communication. But only, we're talking about communication a lot, but all of that comes in the end before you make the choices where you want to sell, right? Because if you want to sell on farmers market, your content probably will be about preparation for that farmers market, that make and builds anticipation of customers who will go to that farmers market. And they will know then that whenever they get there, they want to look for your stand. But if you make a decision to sell in a different channel, then your content also needs to be different. So that's why I was also talking about marketing being a little bit misunderstood, that people see communication and social media and advertising as marketing. But in reality, marketing is much more. It's really also the decision which products. It's the decision between where you will sell those products, and it's the decision how you will price those products, right? And if this is the traditional 4Ps approach to marketing, which is product, place, price, and promotion.
Okay. So I feel like that's big picture again, right? It's saying like before you think about making that social media post, think about how you're priced and how you're positioned and all those,
exactly.
Those kind of
because
things.
It's a totally different story, right? Because if you will make a decision economically that for you, farmers market will be the channel to sell, you will have totally different strategy of, crop planning, pricing, and so on and so on. And even communication will be different. But if you choose to sell to restaurants, it's also totally different, right? Your content then should be towards chefs and maybe how to, how your crops will be best for them, or something that's interesting for that niche. So these choices are really important only after you do that groundwork of really where you want to sell and how you price and so on.
Right. Okay, I can see how, you would have to make those the high level decisions before you decide what content you're going to be putting out there. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free. Most CSAs don't lose members on price. They lose them because their systems break. In a recent 70-minute panel, 3 veteran CSA operators serving hundreds to thousands of members break down production planning, fulfillment, retention, and what they'd change for 2026. They talk honestly about what fails when you scale, how they protect member trust, and what actually drives renewals. Download the full conversation at farmhand.partners/GFM and see how the fastest growing farms are building smarter businesses. That's farmhand.partners/GFM. Farming is hard. Running it shouldn't be. Tend helps you plan your season, map your farm, and track every task from seed to sale. No spreadsheets, no guesswork, just seamless workflows. Tend is the all-in-one farm management platform that brings together planning, field mapping, fulfillment, real-time inventory, sales, labor, traceability, and accounting in one easy platform. Built for small market gardens, CSAs, and large diversified farms. Get started with a free account at tend.com. That's TEND.com. No credit card required. And now, back to the show. I'm wondering, what do you think about recipes? Like, I know one thing we would do at the farmer's market is like when we had a whole lot of something, of course, we would give out a free recipe for that crop. I've actually been thinking about this a little bit for growing for market lately, more as sort of like what you're saying is sort of something we could do on social media to help our intended customer, farmers, with their intended customer, people who eat food, right? Because I like to cook, and we had such good success when we were selling at the farmers market of we'd give out recipes, and sure enough, we would sell more of whatever we were giving out the recipe for. And I was thinking that about trying to make some content for Growing for Market about things that we like to cook with the produce that's in season here where we are, sharing that so that the people who follow Growing for Market could share that on to their own customers, sort of like a digital way of doing what we used to do on paper, of giving out recipes at farmers market. That would be a digital way to do that same thing.
I think that's an amazing story. And I think that I can bet, and it would be great to hear from some of your audiences. Next time they will go to market, let them build anticipation with a specific recipe, maybe a week or a few days before a farmer's market. And I bet they will sell a lot more of that product. And maybe it's a challenge. I would be glad to hear if people can do that. And I think they will. If you will, and even we have that strategy now because we are thinking about how the season will go. And already one of the tactics that we will use, most probably during the season, is that whenever there will be a crop that is maybe in excess, we will try to find ways how to build anticipation for that crop somehow. Either what you just said, amazing recipe, or some collaboration. And I think we need to use that way, these kind of ways in a creative way to really sell out. Because in the end, there's nothing more than crop which is, just sitting there and not being sold. And I'm pretty sure that people can do that. Like whenever they have something in excess and going towards market, or they have an offering of their online store or something like that, I think you can really build an anticipation with that, with a recipe or again, like a video of something like that.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm curious if you have thoughts on the different marketing channels, like social media posts versus email versus paid advertising. And my follow-up question here is that, we were just talking about things that farmers can do. And it seems like, let's say recipes or however they're building demand for what they have coming, would they just take that same idea and do, say a recipe, share that on their email list, and then just take that same recipe, because it's seasonal, right? So take the same recipe, share it out through their social media. Is that a way, would you say that farmers can take the same idea and just share it on whatever way is appropriate for all those different channels? Or do you have comments about those channels in particular, whether some make more sense for farmers than others?
I would probably always try to build your own list, or if that's email list, that's one thing, but in general, your client's list, and try to build it that way. One thing is that obviously you have your social media accounts, and that's one thing, and that's great. But as you mentioned, the way social media works is that they will want you to spend money on paid advertising more and more, right? It's getting more expensive. That's why whenever you can always tease people from social media to move towards your email list, which you have on your own account. And that's always a good tactic, because then you own that list, and you can then later on, you can nurture them. And when you think about specific channel, there's always a channel for the task, right? When you think about this high level awareness, I would say, Instagram, even maybe TikTok is okay. We are not using TikTok. We made that conscious choice, because Instagram for us is enough on that high level reach. Then of course you can use this, because you need to also think how the customer makes the decisions, right? First of all, he needs to even be aware that you're existing. Then he needs to know where you are. And then if you want to purchase, for us, email works the best in terms of converting those customers from social media channels to purchases. And I'm not sure if farmers needs anything more, right? There's traditional media which you can use in your area. Local newspaper probably might be worth it. Some billboards might be worth it as well. It all depends on your circumstances and how you're set up in the, as you mentioned, right? In your competition, how it looks. Because maybe in your area, you're only one, and you can actually spend more on Google, and then everyone will know about you. But it's just specific, right? But I would say, there's a lot to do without spending any money on paid advertising until you have to do it, if you know what I mean. There's still a lot of potential in the free part of social media. Obviously, if you want to have quick results, you can always pay. but it's also not guaranteed that it will work. That there's always also a way how that advertising should be constructed to have the best effect. Because there's also, people consume advertising totally different than organic content, and that always will be the case. So, but that's the end of the process where you're discussing the creativity of ads and how they really can build the memory structure of your farm in your customer's head. Because that's, in the end, that's about it. Like, you want them to see the ad and then connect it to your farm, whatever they are trying to buy but products in the category. There's so many cases where big brands spend a lot of money on either Super Bowl ads or something like that, and people, they enjoy the ad, they recognize celebrities in the ad, but they don't remember what was the brand. And that's the worst outcome, because they know, like, they saw it, they enjoyed it, but then they forgot what was the brand. And if you think about it, like, how often that's the case. And that's why I always advise that there's a lot to be done for free before you start spending.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say take advantage of the free channels before you start spending money on it.
And as I said before, like, there's a lot to be done in follow-up, really calling, picking up your phone and calling your customers, like, what's up? Did you see our email with our offering? Like, are you interested? And it takes time, I know, but it's the most successful and the most effective way to really get sales. Yeah. And again, that's the division between sales and marketing, right? But it's really becoming this direct connection, because they're overwhelmed with number of messages that they see, right? They have, the feed is just constantly scrolling, and there's so many messages that I'm not sure if they will see it. So, but you just need to be there anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and we just had a email marketing expert on the podcast, and she said much the same thing about, build your list, since you own that, unlike social media. And so, yeah, you guys are the kind of people, I love talking to you guys, because you have, understand the farming world, but have, like, good understanding of other things that are really important to farmers. And so if people want to go deep on email, they can go back and find our interview with Angie Machado, where we talk a lot about email.
It was really good. I enjoyed it as well.
Oh, good. Yeah. Angie was great. And that's why I love talking with you guys, because I always learn things, because this stuff is not my background. So I always learn things talking to you guys.
No, and I don't want to overwhelm as well. Like, whatever I'm saying, look at your positioning, pricing, distribution. That's really, like, I know it's really expert stuff that we are talking about. And believe me that a lot of companies which have massive budgets, they don't have that sorted out as well. So what we are talking here is really high level, and you can, as much as you will learn about these concepts, it will make your work much easier, and it will make your farm more successful for sure, because no one else is doing that, and even big companies are not doing that correctly. They are focusing on the wrong stuff, and very often they are focusing on the end of the journey, right? They are focusing on social media before deciding really where they're trying to sell. And they're trying to communicate to the audiences that will never buy from them, for example. And believe me, I was on those teams, I was in those companies, and it's nothing more frustrating than you get the decision to release a certain campaign, but it has no chance of succeeding because it's communicating to the totally different audience. And,
wow.
and companies do that.
Yes, and hopefully we can help our farmers not do that. So I appreciate that.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, one thing that you had mentioned was marketing objectives, which it's important to set, because it's hard to decide if a marketing campaign was successful or not if you didn't have objectives in the first place. But I'm also thinking, like, let's say, I guess if you had something like, I want to sell out my CSA shares, that's a very concrete objective. But if you've never done a marketing campaign before, would you just start with, okay, so you could say, I want to see if I can sell out my CSA shares with, like, email and social media posts. But then if you've never done one before, I feel like it could feel defeating to, like, if you don't sell out. So, like, how would you come up with an objective? Would you say, like, let's just try to sell five CSA shares with this campaign, and then that sets a baseline, and then next time you could say, like, let's try to sell 10 or sell out our CSA shares? Like, how should farmers think about setting objectives for marketing campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point that you mentioned about building on top of whatever you've done already, but let's assume that you have nothing yet. And there's, let's say, few objectives that you can choose from. You can either use the proxy objectives about reach or likes that you get on a campaign, but in reality, that doesn't tell you much because you might have a, let's call it a viral campaign, but not necessarily that will translate to sales. And we had that as well. We had one post that reached 100,000 people and we had, I think, maybe one sign up, which means that it was viral and there were people liking the post, but it was not the post that was converting. And these are very different things. That's why you can set up communication objectives based on reach and likes, but that's what we call a vanity metric because it doesn't tell you anything for the business. So as you mentioned, I would probably focus on a long-term objective. And if your goal is to, let's say, sell 10 CSA, you can build on top of that to think about how many people you should reach potentially, how many of these people should convert or land on your website. And you can just cascade down from that. So let's say you're driving your traffic towards your website when you have your sign up form. So, based on these benchmarks from the market, you can see, let's say, okay, the conversion from Instagram to my website maybe is 9%. If I'm reaching that, that's good. Then if I have 9% on my website and only 2% from that sign up, that's another benchmark. And then from that sign-ups, how many will pay or purchase or whatever. And you can measure on that. And, I would probably go that way and really try to collect data on how the campaigns are going and compare to that. Because there are some market benchmarks you can use, but I would say always it will be better from your own data and build on top of that and slowly trying to improve how people will convert. Because if you see that people are getting from Instagram to your sign up, but they are not converting, maybe there's a messaging issue, right? Maybe they left because you didn't use proper wording and they are not convinced to purchase. And maybe if they signed up, but they didn't finalize or purchase, maybe there's a pricing issue, which is another topic which I would probably just touch on. I would say people and farmers should price their products maybe higher than what they do. Because I think whenever we put the value of our products based on health outcomes, I think we can really push that price a little bit up. And it's not about becoming premium, but it's about valuing your work properly so you can really sustain yourself. But that's another topic. So you can then see, like on these levels, you can really see how people are getting into your website, if they're converting, if not. Maybe you can change the text, maybe you can change the copy, maybe you can be more persuasive. And if you're trying to be more persuasive, then you can think which kind of claims you can use to be more persuasive. And that way you can really test and learn. I know it's a lot, but I think only this systematic way to marketing can help people really see where they are losing and where they can win more. Because if they see that they have a lot of people on their accounts, but not a lot of sign up, that maybe means that they are reaching the wrong audience, for example.
Okay, so people could just use their first campaign as a sort of like a baseline, and then like you're saying, like maybe if they're getting a lot of attention but not getting a lot of sales, maybe they actually need to do more sales content, or like you say, improve the messaging. I guess that's okay. So that makes a lot of sense. It's like people can collect the data from a campaign and try to figure out why it didn't do better and do better the next time.
Yeah. And one thing which I would advise, which now I'm thinking about, to really know your customers, try to talk to them on every occasion that you can, either through social media, get into the comments, get into DMs, or on farmers markets, talk to them, what they value, what they appreciate, what are their, and I think that's always the issue with every company, that they are not talking to the market enough. And I think over in the market, you have the most useful knowledge that you can get. You can really know what your customers are buying, why are they buying, why they are not buying, or why they are buying from the competitors. These are all things that you can then later use in your copy, on your website, in your emails, in your messaging, because then you can really touch those points which they mentioned. Because otherwise, one thing which I've learned in my marketing career is with the time that you're becoming a marketer for a company, you're the least qualified to purchase that brand because you're not objective at all. And you need to be objective to do the message. You're not the customer and you don't know their issues. So I think it's really crucial to talk to them and to know them really well. So then you can base on that.
Yeah. Okay. So people at farmers market could ask them. On the other hand, a lot of times it's busy at farmers market. I'm thinking like they could do email surveys. They can do surveys on social media. Like, am I leaving anything out? Like, that's a great idea. I'm just trying to think of all the different ways you could like ask for input from your customers.
Yeah. I mean, like, or whenever you have those extra 5 minutes by the end of farmers market and you find, one of the customers when it's already slower, like talk to them a little bit more, or maybe even search, online on some of the forums, go through like what people are writing in comments or in different profiles. I think, there's a lot of stuff which you will not use, but maybe some of them give you a hint. And in that case, in the brainstorming part, actually AI is quite useful as well. Like it can come up with, if you ask it to come up with, 50 reasons why people buy, they can give you some hints and you can really dig deeper if that's true or not. But I always advise to really think about yourself as not the customer, because you really don't look at the products that you do with the same perspective. As you mentioned, like whenever we are farmers, we look at our crops as from the beginning, from the seedlings, and then you plant them and then you spend time nurturing and then you bring it to the market and you have totally different connection to that product than someone who is just coming to buy. And I know sometimes it can be painful, but I think it's really true. And it's with every brand, it's with every product. Marketers or people involved in the business are really the least objective. And that way we can then really position our communication in a way that it suits the customers, not us.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good.
And I think farmers as well have this tendency, and me as well, we are very proud of what we do. And we believe that it's enough. And we believe that it's, our work speaks for itself, but I think it's not enough. And we need to really talk about it and talk in the language that our customers will understand.
That's a good point. See how they actually see it.
Yeah.
Well, there's something interesting that you said to me over email while we were talking about this. And you said that marketing is much more than just communication. And maybe we already covered that, but if we didn't, can I ask you what you meant by that?
Well, yeah, we covered it, let's say from the overview perspective, that whenever I dealt with marketing in the companies I worked for, communication was only really the end part of what we did. And we were really focusing on stuff like product, and we were really working based on this customer and market input. And we were always looking and talking to the customers, because only then we knew what we can change in the product, or maybe we can change where we are selling. And these are decisions which are done much earlier than communication, because we were thinking, should we be online or should we be only physical? Also the pricing perspective, like pricing, I think is one of the most important parts of marketing, which is not considered marketing, because a lot of people, and unfortunately that's the case with global marketing now, that people are not educated in pricing and they left this to sales or business people, and marketing went totally towards creative social media aspects. But really pricing is where the business outcomes really lie, because the small changes in pricing can set you up for failure or not. And I think this is where a lot of farmers are struggling, because they are pricing their products much lower than the value of their work, and what they can bring to the market. And then what I said before, they are trying to compete with large scale markets and institutions that can beat them on price. And I think this is something which we should make a decision to price ourselves higher, but then deliver in different ways. And deliver the value in terms of health, clean food that's supporting your well-being. So just answering your question quickly, communication is one thing, but I think this product, which means which products you will sell and how they will, what exactly will go to the market, pricing, and then place, which means where will you sell your products. These three things are much more important than communication, because based on that, you make the decision to either, are you going to the farmers markets which you know that it's overcrowded, or are you choosing to have online store which you know is not serviced by anyone, for example. Like, these choices will make a huge difference. Because, for example, if we would make a choice to go to a farmer's market, I know that in our area, the farmer's market is already overpopulated with a lot of farmers. And there is no issue for customers there. Whoever goes there, they can find what they need. I would not stand out at all.
Okay.
But what we made a decision that we will sell through CSA that is shipped across the country, because no one is doing that, or not a lot of farms are doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a good choice. And then we can, like, based on that decision, we already know how to communicate and how to price our product and which products we should grow.
Yeah, okay. Oh, actually, I'm glad you said that, because I know you said that you had like a 24-hour delivery service. And so
Yeah.
does that mean that you're able to sell CSA shares to anybody anywhere in the country?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, we are using one of the logistics partners, I think it's globally recognized. We are using their food service, which means that they will collect our goods and they will deliver them not later than 24 hours, which means that we can harvest in the morning and then pack and then ship in the afternoon. And then next afternoon, our clients will have their goods at their address.
Interesting. Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure if it's possible in some of the countries, but I think, and I advise some people to look at it, and specifically to look at the food part of logistics. And you think about it, it's not expensive to do that. So I'm not sure if this is specific for Poland, but I will definitely look into these solutions.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sure it's not specific to Poland, just because I know some CSA farms who have tried like various forms of home delivery. Whether in some cases I know that like they bought the van, they were dropping the CSA shares. I know in some other cases they were taking advantage of other logistics to get the CSA shares there. But sort of like you were saying, as far as setting your own products apart, like the ability to home delivery, like people love convenience, right? That's definitely like just the fact that you could deliver. Obviously not everybody has to do that, but if you decide to do that, that would be one way to set your farm apart from other farms that just do on-farm pickup or other options. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like, these are the high-level choices that you need to make, whatever you're comfortable with. But again, my ask would be to really look outside of those models which are already in place, because as you said, this is one way that you can be different and distinctive. Because if you know that you will go to a market that you can be successful with your offering, great, that's amazing. But those decisions where you will sell are much more important than really what will you grow. Because if you don't want to get into an issue that you will be left with a lot of harvest not sold, then really make those decisions properly early on, because that's a differentiator maker.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about not trying to be the lowest priced farm, because that, just leads to a race to the bottom. In fact, I made an impression on me many years ago. I talked to an old farmer who said that he would walk around the farmer's market and look at what everybody else was selling their produce for, and he would make sure his prices were like 10 or 20%. I forget exactly what he said, but basically actually make sure his prices were a little bit higher than whatever the market average was, because he didn't want to be racing to the bottom on pricing. And it actually reminds me of another thing that I heard about the guy who started Red Bull, the energy drink.
Yeah.
About how he priced it at a premium price level from the beginning. And I might get part of this slightly wrong, but I heard that somebody asked him, "You've got this brand new product. How did you know that people would pay the high price point for it?" And he was like, well, he wanted the high price point to speak for itself, of like, say, like, you can tell it's quality because it's not cheap. And so I think that's true, is that, farmers work very hard and it's an expensive time to farm. I think it's farming's never easy, but I think things are expensive right now. I think it's a hard time right now to make a profit in farming, and so people need to price their products accordingly. I love that idea of not just trying to, of like what you said, all the things you said about decommodifying, and not just trying to compete on price, because I think when we try to compete on price, we tend to lose.
Yeah, I mean, we have no chance. Whenever we will try to compete on price, like the reality is that always there will be someone cheaper than us, either different farmer, or we will end up in a supermarket where, you can buy really, really cheap stuff, which is imported from somewhere. And that's the reality. You have to make a conscious choice of somehow positioning yourself as something different. And by pricing like that, I think it also sets you apart from the customers that will not buy from you anyway. And whoever will buy, believe me that these customers tend to be more aware of what value actually you're bringing to the market. And I think we should be proud about what we are bringing to the market. And if people have money to spend it on other things, I think they can pay their local farmer who grows organically a proper price for their food. And I would stand like that. You, of course, then need to make up with maybe better communication, maybe better offering, maybe better customer service. But if you will price your product well, then in the end, it will be worth it. There's always this formula about if you increase your prices, how many customers you will lose. But in the end, your profit might be higher because of the price increase. So you always need to think about that, because that always, whenever your profit is higher, but you're serving a little bit less customers, that might be better for you, because you can then maybe focus more on different aspects of your business to increase the value again. And then maybe you can still have, again, more customers, if you know what I mean. Like, it's always this push and pull. And it's either you want to serve a lot of customers for lower price, but then have compromises on customer service and different aspects of your business, or you really want to have quality service from A to Z for a fair price. And I would say usually the latter is the better choice for many, many businesses, not only farming.
Yeah, right. Like people probably can't double their prices from what everybody else is charging.
Sure, no, of course.
We've had some articles like that in the magazine before about, talking about that, of like, you might actually be more profitable, or like talking about how to do those calculations to look at like, okay, if we raise prices by this much and we lose this many sales, what you said of like, we're still more profitable because we're getting more per piece or more per unit, or those kinds of things. So, people are probably familiar with those kinds of strategies. There's some articles in the archive if they want to go read what we've said about that in the past. Actually, there's one thing that I wanted to follow up with you from that you said early in the interview. You were saying how you made some kind of deal with dietitians or something, local businesses, to help promote your products. Can I ask, is it like an affiliate kind of thing where they get a percentage of sales, or is it that they get a free CSA share for promoting your business or something like that? I'm curious to draw on your experience of like, to help people think about what might work for their own farms.
Sure. I want to be as specific as possible, because I think then it makes sense and it's useful for your listeners. Our basic deal was that for 5 signups which are purchased, the dietitian gets a CSA share. And it was as simple as that. And we also discussed with them that we wanted to be fair, that if they get much more than 5, somehow we can also give them some extra products. But they were always like, no, it's no need, because they believed in the mission, right? If you get people who are valuing the same things that you do, they will be more than glad to jump on the mission and communicate it. And again, for us, it worked, right? Like, we had one girl that brought 62 signups, and of course there was less converting, but it's amazing, right?
Yeah, wow.
And it's just simple like that, because again, like, we started from nothing, and in December, our Instagram was 0. Or maybe November. So we started with nothing. We had only a very small network of people who knew about us, but it was also our choice not to promote it to our family and friends, Because for me, I wanted to test the market, how the market will react. Because it's very easy to get the feeling that everything's working if, if your family and friends are buying from you, you get the feeling that, oh, maybe it's working. But then when you go out to the market, it might be totally different. So we made a conscious decision not to promote it among our friends, but we straight went to those collaborations with those dietitians and those businesses. And again, for every farm, this calculation might be different. For us, this ratio of 5 signups or purchases was enough to cover their CSA share, and they were fine with that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I have heard of some similar kinds of things. Like, I can think of an example of where a CSA farm that I know of was giving a pickup location. They would give them a free CSA share for letting them host their CSA, or I guess it was drop off. Like, a local business in town let them drop their shares off and let people pick them up there in exchange for a CSA share.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah. And even if people don't have a CSA box, they can offer, I was thinking you could offer a bouquet, or you could offer some credit. Like, I know a lot of farmers now are putting like credit on a market card or something like that. Like, CSA is a cool model, but even people who aren't doing CSA could probably think of ways to incentivize people to either tell like-minded businesses about their CSA, or let them use their facilities or something like that. So that's a cool idea. Thank you for sharing that.
It reminded me now of something that, because we were talking about different channels, right? And I'm just thinking now that as farmers, maybe we should rely more about those traditional channels. Like, I'm thinking if you're a local farmer and you want to sell locally, good old posters in cafes, maybe talking to the cafe. And I think these channels work in those specific settings. And we not necessarily have to be all over the place, but choosing these channels that are delivering most value. Or even, like maybe talking to a cafe that that is maybe health oriented, and offering them a CSA share for communication. That would be also a way to get the right people in front of your offering.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. Is that for local farms that are trying to sell to their local community, some of those traditional ways of advertising, word of mouth and posters and stuff like that, probably still would work for a local business.
Like, listen, there's no such a thing like email marketing is dead or something is dead. It only is dead in a certain environment. Maybe for other not, but like if you're trying to sell, I don't know, perfumes, maybe email is dead. But for farmers, I believe that some traditional marketing channels might actually work. And now I'm thinking about it that, like posters or just, flyers maybe are worth looking into. Of course, there's different specifics set up in your area, but farmers should look for their own environment and where their potential customers are, because that's only about that. Like, where are those customers? If they are spending time in specific places, maybe reaching out to those places is a good idea, and trying to get them on the mission.
Yeah, good point. Well, Jakub, I feel like we've really covered pretty much everything that I had prepared for you as far as questions, and I've really enjoyed the conversation, but I just wanted to say, is there anything else that I should have asked you, or that you'd like to say before we let you go?
Just, I really wish every farmer to be proud of their work and try to look into marketing, because that might be something that is setting them really from success. And I really wish for every farmer to have financial success, because that's what makes them continue that mission. And I think it's really worth it to be able to sustain that for long term, because again, I think what you just mentioned as well, like every price increase is happening in every industry and category. And we should be able to continue that mission if we want to have an impact. So yeah, I know it's a lot on their head, but looking into it is worth it. And that's maybe my message.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's the reality, right? Is that probably a lot of people who are listening are running small businesses. And as you say, they wear a lot of hats. They got to be the farmer. They've also got to be the marketer. They've also got to be the salesperson, et cetera, right? And so I think what you just passed along as some really good ideas of how to do that marketing aspect without necessarily having a huge team behind you, because that's true. Is anybody who isn't selling out of like isn't selling all their produce at the farmers market, isn't selling all their flowers at the farmers market, isn't selling out all their CSA shares, they could probably stand to do a little marketing. And I mean, I guess, one thing I think about the business of farming is that most people's farms aren't like a big company where they have to like, whatever you did this year, you have to do like 3 or 4% more at least to make the shareholders happy next year. Like, one nice thing about farming is that it's a small individual business in most cases. And so you can say, like, if I'm happy running a farm that produces enough for 100 CSA shares, I can just do that. So I guess there are some examples where people, if they're at the right size, great. But I think that a lot of us could probably grow the business if we want to with some good marketing. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about that.
Sure. No, I mean, 100%, and you're right. Like, I'm also believing in the enough is enough, and I really don't want to grow my farm to massive size because I believe in small scale. And then whenever you grow it too much, you get into the same trap of maybe loss of quality and the processes and so on and so on. So there's always a risk with that, but it doesn't mean that within your scale, you can do a bit better. And maybe you can then have that small price increase because your communication is better and your marketing is better. So you can have more satisfaction from what you do, because then financially at the end of the year, either you choose to spend that money on improvements of the farm or just have a really quality life. I think really farmers deserve to have their work valued properly. And that's just my message.
Yeah. And it's an important one because you've probably noticed, I think some farmers are funny about money. I think talking about making a profit, because so many people do farming out of a passion and because they think it's making the world a better place. And I think it is all those things. But at the end of the day, if we don't make a profit, we're not going to keep doing all those good things, right? So yes, I'm
exactly
want to promote people being fine with talking about. It's just important. That's what sets farming apart from gardening, right? Is making a profit. And so, like, even if people have a hard time or don't like to think about the money aspect of it, they could just think it's like making a profit is like the modern version of growing a surplus to take you through the winter, right? Like maybe like you go back far enough, maybe it wasn't so much money. It was more like subsistence farming. Like, well, in this day and age, if you're running a business, got to make a profit to make it through to the next year. And so I think people should not be shy about talking about, things like marketing that can help them make a profit. Because actually, I'm glad you made that point right there at the end, because maybe you've sold all 100 of your CSA shares, but you're not making a profit. And so maybe you could say, like, marketing is the way that we're going to raise our prices 20%. And we know that some of our customers, so like some of our current 100 CSA customers are going to say like, okay, that's enough. Like, you raised your price, I'm not going to go with you. But the marketing would be the way that you would find the next people who are willing to pay the premium that you need to get to stay in business from one year to the next. So very, very good point. Thank you, Jakub.
No, exactly. And there's nothing worse than, working through the year and not be satisfied by the end of the year of the financial outcome. And again, like, this is not about more and more, but it's about enough, as you said, for something that can get you through the winter without constantly thinking about money. And unfortunately, we are living in a world where this is such an important topic, and it would be foolish not to think about it. But yeah, it's just a way of really being satisfied and being valued. And I think that's unfortunately now, the currency that is showing your value is through cash. But again, it's about being really well paid in the end, because you're doing a hard work and you're doing something which, as you said, you want to do a lot more different good activities that are good for the environment, the community. But you can do it only so long as you can sustain yourself. And if you want to do it for the long term, you need to be able to have satisfaction in that, because otherwise that's the quickest way to burn out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here with the magazine and the podcast, is show people how they can make a decent living. Because like you just said, if you're just barely scraping by, you're going to burn out. And so I want farmers to make farming's hard work. I want farmers to make a decent living so they can have a little bit of time off and not burn out and go again next year. And so to that end, I really appreciate you sharing what you know about marketing that I think is going to help people do all that. So All right, Jacob, where can people find you, either online or social media or wherever you want people to look you up?
Yeah, so if they want to talk about marketing or stuff like that, they can find me on www.jakubkosmowski.com. I still have some marketing consulting work there. I don't do much because I'm fully busy with farming. But if they want to learn more or get some advice, I'm more than happy to help them. Yeah, basically that, or search me or look for me on Instagram. I'm there as well. So I'm open to any discussions and any help.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, Jacob. Really appreciate you reaching out. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think our audience will too. So thanks again for reaching out and sharing, and take care and good luck with the farm this year.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or a review. It really helps others find the podcast. For more tips and tricks from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business operations and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine for a month, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days and you'll never even get billed. All subscriptions get you a year of the magazine, plus 150 downloadable back issues from the last 15 years and over 1,700 archived articles. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 a year, head on over to growingformarket.com and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers, for farmers, in Growing for Market magazine.